Welcome to Mapping the Deep, the social knowledge of deep-sea corals, specifically the biogeography of deep-sea corals. The key research questions in this field are: what are deep-sea corals located? What is the critical information for making an accurate map? Do fish rely on deep-sea coral habitats? What are the critical areas that need protection now? So why all the interest? Well, anthropogenic effects can have a great influence on the deep, such as exploration for resources, such as deep-sea fishing, oil and gas exploration, and minerals. There are also negative effects, such as climate change, ocean acidification, and pollution. But there are also conservation effects through groups such as the World Wildlife Fund, the United Nations General Assembly, and Fisheries and Oceans Canada, just to name a few. They protect using classifications such as vulnerable marine ecosystems, marine protected areas, and ecologically and biologically significant areas. But how do scientists find the corals to protect them? They do this by developing predictive habitat models from factors such as nutrients, currents, and coral structure. But how does one find the elements for all of this information? Well, a scope of searches using 4 variations of keywords was conducted: cold water corals, coral habitat mapping, deep sea corals, and deep sea coral habitat mapping. Searching the term cold water corals produced 513 articles from 1957 to 2012, with a sharp increase in the last 10 years and an international effort, with the US making up 18% and Japan making up about 2%. Using the keywords deep sea corals produced 596 articles from 1870 to 2012. With an increase in publication in the last 10 years and an international effort, with the U.S. making up 37% and now the Pacific Islands only making up about 8%. The Coral Habitat Mapping Search produced 162 publications from 1981 to 2012, with again an increase in the last decade and a less varied international effort, with the U.S. making up 35% and the small Pacific island, New Caledonia, making up 6%. The most precise search of deep-sea coral habitat mapping produced only 18 publications from 1992 to 2012, with North America making up 42% of the publications. When the field is analyzed using CiteSpace, there is a highly branched display of the top 30 papers for the years between 1985 and 2012. The groupings are mostly of coral and geology type research, with examples such as the Coral Sea and number 5 seabed geology. But of all the searches, the most common journals are these, particularly the Marine Ecology Progress Series, which is published in the U.S. and edited by Otto Klein, a senior German professor. The Public Library of Science is a new journal of open access, requiring authors to pay to have their articles published. And Marine Geology has an international editorial board of high-ranking professionals from institutions in the Netherlands, Canada, and the U.S. These journals are all peer-reviewed, field-specific, and published mostly in North America and Europe. To better illustrate this, 2 papers have been examined: Bryan and Matakis, 2007, Kozlow et al., 2001. Predicting suitable habitat for deep-water Gorgonian corals on the Atlantic and Pacific continental margins of North America was published by Bryan and Matakis, 2 Canadian researchers working in Canadian waters. It was published in the U.S. journal Marine Ecology Progress Series, which has a German editor. It's been cited 35 times so far by researchers in the US, Canada, and the UK. Seamount benthic macrofauna of southern Tasmania, community structure and impacts of trawling, was published by Coslow, an Australian researcher working in Australian waters. Again, it was published in the Marine Ecology Progress Series, which is a US journal with a German editor. It has been cited 123 times by researchers in, not surprisingly, Australia, the US, and New Zealand. While both papers and journals are international, the center is mostly in English-speaking countries, with other European countries and Asian countries making up the peripheral. However, this can be seen in the funding agencies. Much of the funding for coral research comes from governments, such as Marino, the National Natural Science and Engineering Research Council, the National Science Foundation in the US, among many others. These government agencies allow universities to employ professors and graduate students to continue research for protective areas for corals. The increased effort can be traced back from the past decade to the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 61-105 in 2006, which urges member states to protect corals and specifically to investigate habitats in the deep sea. So while the mandates come from the United Nations, most of the funding and research comes from Europe and North America, with most of the research being conducted in waters close to those continents. However, to get the word out and to drum up interest in the deep sea, numerous documentaries have been produced by the BBC, Discovery Channel, and National Geographic, with key people such as Sylvia Earle, Robert Ballard, and of course, the film director Jim Cameron.